I was a police officer for 15 years. Eventually found myself working overseas. My third deployment, I was seriously injured. Our convoy was hit by a roadside bomb. I was ready to admit that I have PTSD.
We'd have episodes where he didn't even know who we were. The day-to-day was really hard. It was really hard. We didn't have the skills to stay connected.
When you're trying to bury all these emotions and not deal with it, you put yourself in a deep, dark rabbit hole. The tendency is to shut everybody out.
I didn't think that being hit as a kid was trauma. It was this part of my life that I buried so deep that I wouldn't talk about it, or if I talked about it, I would talk about how common it is in Latin culture. Like, everyone experiences that, so therefore it wasn't trauma.
There was so much trauma, and I couldn't move anymore. I was frozen. I was contemplating, this is not worth living, or let's ask for help. So of course, the first one I called is my big sister. And she told me about this OM thing.
My sister Iris, she called me, and as an OBGYN, I had been practicing orgasmic meditation for about 4 or 5 months. And for me, it was transformational. My sister then was telling me how depressed she was and what a hard time she was having with life. She was even maybe a little suicidal. And I encouraged her to try OMing.
There was an OM demonstration. And I saw that, I watched it, and I thought, I don't know what this is, but I need to know.
Orgasmic meditation is a wellness practice that combines mindfulness with the power of the deeply human, deeply felt experience of orgasm. During the practice, one person strokes another person's clitoris for 15 minutes with no goal other than to feel.
I had 20 years of experience with OM, had 30,000 people come through and try it, and I saw something that was in contradistinction to what we understood trauma to be in the world. So I knew that we needed science as a way to explain the difference in what was happening.
Now there is increasing scientific evidence that OM produces health benefits, even for people who have experienced childhood trauma.
Researchers say that they always knew that the sex impulse had the potential for healing, but they couldn't find a way that it would be safe enough in a container where the results could be replicated and where the attention could actually be grown so that the person could integrate the healing that they had. And that's what OM does.
We have always thought about this relationship between rituals and spirituality, from more purely mating rituals into the rituals that are a part of many aspects of human life.
There's always been interest to understand sexual response and think about the many functions of sex that may help influence general health.
A 2016 study done by Dr. Nicole Prause found that OM increased positive emotions while decreasing negative emotions.
People who had more adverse childhood experiences actually reported more positive emotion and specifically sexual arousal to the orgasmic meditation. It seems like there's something unique that's happening in there that might be useful for folks who have had that kind of a history to have these intense pleasurable experiences, maybe in a safe container.
The kinds of work, I think people are starting to see that actually being able to feel the traumatic, the thing that triggered the trauma, really have that feeling fully in a container of safety is a super effective way to heal trauma. And OM as a practice is exactly that.
If you're someone who's had a trauma history, would this give you the ability to have an intense emotional experience, but because it's on the positive side, it doesn't have some of the fear and resistance that we have when we treat someone who has a trauma history with cognitive processing therapy or exposure therapies that involve going back through these extremely negative recalls. So if this gives us another pathway to access some form of healing, maybe related to depression or post-traumatic stress disorders, that would be a huge win.
One of the frustrating things about trauma treatments, at least in the past, that haven't really worked to move and get rid of the existing trauma have been primarily focused on getting you to work around it, to avoid the situation or to get numb to the situation so that you can tolerate being in a space that re-triggers the trauma for you, as opposed to really freeing you of that trauma forever.
Trauma is normal human experience. Everybody experiences trauma. We are the descendants of those people who had the ability to experience extreme pain, mourn, grieve, reconnect with their communities. Community is very important in recovering and coping with trauma, and then move back into the life and the business of finding joy and meaning in life. That's like a clogged pipe. Nothing is flowing. Their emotions aren't flowing. In one sense, you could call traumatic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, uncried tears. It's unprocessed emotions that are held in. There's no safe place to let it out, no healing surround in which to do the mourning.
We did a study where we did the mystical experience questionnaire with partners and asked them both to complete the questionnaire after an OM. And we found that indeed, people talk about their most powerful OM. It is a mystical experience level that's similar to a dose of psilocybin, a moderate dose of psilocybin, and that both partners in an OM have that. If one partner had a particularly powerful OM, the other partner did as well. So there is some sense of sharing of the experience that, at least by the strength of it, as you would describe in kind of mystical experience, that's true.
I remember that moment of knowing that I could feel, and it was such a beautiful experience to be able to slow down enough to feel my body, to have another person with me connected in such a soft, beautiful way, and that actually opened up a lot more connection in my life and made it more possible to relate with people in a more intimate way.
It's not like a repeat and a revisit of trauma over and over again. You get there, you feel where that trauma lives, and it comes up without you having to dig it out. It comes up and it drops off. And OM is what turned my lights on. It turned me back on. It lifted me back up.
I was able to heal my trauma. Different layers started peeling off as the stuff that you had buried. And then that connection that you're building and working on with your spouse, you're getting to a different level.
That happened for me too, as well. Just baggage that not only what we had been through, but baggage that I carried with me from the time I was a child. It went straight down to the root.
Whatever traumatic experience you've had, you can't overcome it.
Most people walk around in such a state of confusion, not knowing who they are, what they feel, what they believe, and what's happening. OM gives you that fundamental ground.